Hi everybody and welcome to this video. My name is Amanda. I am a hand embroidery artist, and on this channel I like to share some process videos and embroidery tutorials to help inspire you and teach you the art of embroidery. Today I'm sharing the stitching process of one of my most recent embroidery patterns. I figured I'd share some tips I've found helpful over the years for thread painting while I share this footage. And before we get started, if you'd like to stitch this cat and butterfly design, it's available to my patrons for the month of May in 2025, and it's also available for purchase in my shop. I'll leave a link for both in the description. And now let's get into it. The first tip that I have is one that you need to do before you even get started stitching, and that is to use a good reference photo. You want a photo that shows proper lighting, proportions, and colors. Unless you're a pro and you already know how to draw from memory or you're familiar with particular subject matter, your finished embroidery is only going to turn out as nice as whatever reference photo you use. Basically, I like to say that I can't stitch what I can't see, so you want something that has lots of details in it so that you can include as much or as little details as you want. And that leads me into my next tip. If you have a nice reference photo, you will be able to clearly see any fur patterns or color changes, and you want to be able to mark out the color changes. This will act as a map or a guide while you're referencing the photo while you're stitching. Once you have created a design off of a reference photo, you want to use a transfer method that allows you to incorporate a decent amount of detail. I prefer to use Super Solvy, which is a translucent stabilizer that's water soluble. It makes it super easy to just lay on top of a screen or a piece of paper with the printed pattern and then trace over it with a micron or some kind of archival marker. The other product I like to use is Stick and Stitch. Some people don't love Stick and Stitch, but I think it's great because you can conveniently just print it off directly onto the stabilizer and not worry about transferring it over by hand. While sometimes I will trace, I just feel like it's exceptionally challenging because intricate designs with a lot of fine lines can be really hard to see through the fabric. So give those two products a shot if you've never tried them before. I think you'll notice a huge difference. When it comes to color selection, I think that having a color card on hand is really important. This will help you to find similar color groups, and you can lay thread on top of it to compare different colors, shades, tints, and tones. I recommend having a color card that actually has the thread on it. They come in printed formats, but I just feel like the colors are not as accurate. I know the threaded cards are a little bit more expensive, but I do think it's worth it in the long run. The next thing that took me way too long to figure out is that using one strand is a lot easier to achieve a nice subtle blend of colors, and it also allows you to add in a lot of tiny details. However, this is not a rule, it's just a suggestion. If you want your thread paintings to look a little bit more abstracted and painterly, try using 2 or 3 strands at a time. I've definitely done both. I generally gravitate towards using one just because a lot of my work, I try to achieve more of a realistic look to it, but I do think that 2 or 3 strands looks really nice as well. When you're thread painting, especially if you're using only one strand at a time, it's really easy to go back over areas you've already stitched. If you want to add highlights or shadows, or maybe you just don't really like the color you're using, sometimes you don't have to remove stitches when you're thread painting. This is especially helpful, like I said, with one strand because the coverage of the fabric and the thickness of your stitches isn't as crazy as if you were to use like 4 or 5 strands at a time. It gets kind of hard to pull a needle and thread through the more thread you're using, but I feel like thread painting as a technique is really forgiving in that way. This also applies to intentionally adding things like highlights to the fur if you're stitching an animal. I do this all the time because, fur and realistic things are very dimensional and they have a lot of different colors and shades to them. So don't shy away from trying to add in a little bit more if you feel like something looks a little bit flat. I hope you found these tips helpful. A lot of these things I've kind of learned over the years, and sometimes I'm like, man, why didn't I think of that earlier? So if one of these tips stands out to you and it was an aha moment, please leave it in the comments. I'd love to hear. And let me know if you've ever tried thread painting before. As always, if you'd like to dive deeper into learning the art of thread painting, I make monthly patterns and also have lots of tutorials for thread painting as well as pet portraiture on my Patreon. I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to learn more about the memberships I offer. In the meantime, I hope that you try some of these tips out and they help you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.